My talk today will focus on the basics of Bitcoin mining. I'm a Bitcoin educator for 7 years, and I was a teacher previously. I was teaching mathematics, physics, and English. So the purpose of my talk today is to give you analogies and basics of Bitcoin mining so you can become what I call a Bitcoin micro-educators for your communities, for your families. So when you're having next family dinner, you can tell your family about what is really Bitcoin mining on simple analogies, and this way we can get more people interested into Bitcoin and not have it as a thing that's kind of ununderstandable. So, who one of you can solve a Rubik's Cube? Is there anybody? Okay, a couple of you. Good job. So when you were learning to solve a Rubik's Cube, you weren't just doing it yourself and trying to figure it out. You mostly kind of watched a YouTube video and get the algorithm, right? Is there somebody who really nailed it without any tutorials, any help from external? Really? Big applause for him. Like, this is the first person I really know who could do that. Me, I really cannot imagine that. So Bitcoin mining. Imagine you get a Rubik's Cube to your hand, and without you knowing how to solve it, you can figure that out over time. You can learn how to do it. You can make it faster even when you check some algorithms, and you can really learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube in half an hour, in an hour. And then your base time can be maybe 5 to 10 minutes, you can just solve it. Which if you tell to somebody who never solved the Rubik's Cube, 10 minutes is like, wow, that's amazing. But what you're doing, you're looking at the Rubik's Cube, you're checking where the positions are, where the colors are, and you're progressing through an algorithm. Bitcoin mining is like somebody gives you a Rubik's Cube, but you're blindfolded, you never saw the initial position of the colors, and they tell you, okay, solve a Rubik's Cube, and if you do it, I give you $1,000. And you might be asking the guy, okay, but how can I solve it if I never saw the initial positions? Well, it's only guess, it's only trial and error, and you can solve it for hours, months, and years. And suddenly, after a couple of years, the guy watching you tells you, wow, now you solved it, now you want this $1,000. So this is the analogy, this is one of the analogies what the Bitcoin mining really is. It's a random guessing without you knowing what is the initial setup, but you know how the target, where you're getting to, how it should look like, right? Because everybody, when you solve the Rubik's Cube, everybody can verify you really solved it. So you did the proof of work, but it was random, it was just guessing. I want to talk about why there is a Bitcoin mining, because it's a process that's a little bit complicated. Many people, it's very unintuitive for them. So initially we need to speak about like why we even have that. And the why is the most important part of it. So mining was designed to solve a problem. It's not just there to, let's have fun, let's waste energy, let's boil the ocean, how all the environmentalists are going to tell you. It's really there to solve a problem of decentralized network. So what was the problem? What was the initial problem? Maybe you know something that's called Hashcash. Anybody heard of Hashcash before? Okay, a couple of people. Hashcash is something that gives birth to Bitcoin mining. Hashcash as a algorithm, as a concept, was developed by Adam Back in 1997. And Adam is somewhere here on the conference. You can meet him. He's really the OG of Bitcoin. So what was the problem that Adam wanted to solve? The problem was there was a lot of spam emails everywhere on the internet, because sending an email is cheap. It's costless. It doesn't cost you anything. And that's why we are receiving tons and tons of spam emails, because if the spammer sent 1 million emails, and maybe the open rate or success rate is 0.00%, well, he will make some money and he can send another million emails. So Adam's idea was to make sure that when you're sending an email, it will be a little bit costly for you, but you're not going to pay for it with PayPal or with Bitcoin at the time. It was before Bitcoin. But you're going to pay with your computing power, with energy that you're going to spend, that your computer going to spend to solve a mathematical function. And when the computer solves it in a couple of seconds or milliseconds, then the email can be sent and everybody can verify that you really did the work, that your computer really did the work on that. So analogy that we can use is using a post stamp. This is a beautiful one from Czech Republic where we are right now. So imagine if sending postcards or letters was inexpensive, was like free. You know, you would have so much spam in your post box, which sometimes we do. But imagine that for sending a postcard, you need to buy a stamp for some amount of money. So suddenly it becomes costly. So what the Hashcash was doing was putting a stamp on an email, on an envelope, to make sure that there is a cost connected to sending something, to sending a digital information. And suddenly it made it costly, and suddenly the spammers were not anymore incentivized to send millions of emails because computing of all these millions of emails would be as costly as and the return on investment would be marginal or negative. So Hashcash is something like putting a stamp on the envelope when sending an envelope. So the first problem or the first something that mining solved was a problem of transaction ordering. Because if you look here, this is a very vague and basic representation of a decentralized network and something that we call the double spend. So imagine if bitcoins could be spendable and you can just create bitcoins on your computer for free. Suddenly I can use one bitcoin to pay in a beer shop, the other bitcoin, the same bitcoin, the copy of it to pay it in the pizza, and I send this information to different participants in the network. So one computer thinks, okay, this bitcoin was spent for pizza, and he sends this information all around the network. But the other computer in the other part of the world thinks that the bitcoin was spent for a beer. And somewhere in the middle, suddenly there is a computer who is getting conflicting informations. Wow, like this bitcoin was spent on pizza and on beer at the same time. It's not possible. The same as it's not possible to do it with cash, Satoshi needed to design a way how to make sure that digital money are also not spendable 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and needed to create something that prevents us to create more and more transactions. Because money to work, there needs to be an order of when the transaction happened. We need to know which transaction happened first, which transaction is second, and in digital world, it's very hard to do without central parties. Because when Satoshi was designing Bitcoin, he was like, okay, let's remove the central authority there. Let's remove the bank who's ordering the transactions in a digital world. With cash, it's pretty simple, right? Cash doesn't have this problem because if I want to get or give $100 to somebody, I need to receive it first. I cannot give it without me receiving. So this transaction, me getting $100 needs to be first, and me sending $100 needs to be second. So in cash, it's pretty easy. In digital world, it was difficult. So one thing that mining solves is how to order the transactions. We have something called blockchain. I think you heard about that. But to make sure that nobody can create more blockchains and we have one single truth, the mining was introduced to make creation of money hard and connected to reality and to physical reality of energy. So what mining is doing is making sure that digital money is connected to the physical world in terms of energy. Why energy? Because that's something we cannot create out of whim. Because somebody, and before Satoshi, there was other projects, somebody can say, okay, let's create a protocol where if somebody want to order transactions, we will be voting who will be the one ordering. But with voting and with democracy, you know how it works, a lot of populism, you can create fake emails and go voting, you know, online many times and so on. So there are a bunch of other problems. Satoshi realized to make sure it's not able to be copied and faked, we need to use something that cannot be created as well, and that's energy. So that's how we have the anchor to reality, and this is why I don't like proof of stake, because I don't see a true anchor to reality. With mining, of Bitcoin mining, we have the anchor with the energy. The second problem that mining is solving is coin distribution. How to make sure that there is no one person owning all the coins and selling to everybody else, which is happening most of the time with new tokens, where the token holder or token creator has all the tokens and then he's selling to people on exchanges or I don't know, everywhere on the internet and getting money for it. Satoshi was inspired by gold, because gold is something that doesn't have a central bank. We can barely say that the central bank of gold is our planet Earth. And you cannot corrupt planet Earth. You need to do the work to get the gold out from the ground. You need to take, a rake or plow, how it's called in English, and to dig it out from the ground. And the gold is distributed around the world in a decentralized manner. It's not like just one single place where the gold is, but you can find it in various places. Of course, we have some places where there is more gold, but in general, it's very dispersed, very distributed. That's why all the civilizations around the world could get into gold without, them relocating and mining gold in only one spot. So Satoshi's idea was to really make sure that we have this distribution of money around many participants and not only in the one single point, in one single hand. And mining solves this because it makes sure that anybody around the world can participate. The rules are very straightforward how to mine Bitcoin. And if you spend energy, you can do it. You can even mine on a piece of paper with a pen, but it's super inefficient. But this way, Satoshi made sure that he is not the one owning all the Bitcoins, and he makes sure that anybody can get to them, but expending energy so the coins are distributed well. The third problem was predictable money creation. Look at the governments. Right now in the US, they raised the debt ceiling for the 78th time. It's insane. Imagine you have a family, you have your own company, and you're borrowing money, and for a 78th time you claim like, yeah, I borrow some more, but I will return it in the future. It would never work. But suddenly, somehow the governments can do it, and they can print infinitely. And we as people have no control of it. So what mining solved is predictable money creation. This is what the guys in the US are doing, but we don't want that to happen with Bitcoin. So maybe you saw this chart maybe a couple of times. The blue line is the line of money of Bitcoin being produced during the years since 2009 till roughly 2140, which is when approximately the last part of Bitcoin will be mined. We will get to 21 million, and there will never be more Bitcoins than 21 million. It will be slightly below that. If somebody wants to have 100 million, well, they can create their own tokens and coins, which happened a lot of times. That's why we have 20,000 other shitcoins. But with Bitcoin, it's not impossible. It's not possible. You would need to really create a consensus, which I cannot imagine people voluntarily deciding to dilute their own money. Within the governments, you have no choice. You need to somehow accept it or ideally opt out to Bitcoin. And the orange line is a line that shows us the inflation rate of Bitcoin. So you can see that in a couple of years, we'll get to less than 0.006% of inflation. So we'll really get, right now, the inflation of Bitcoins is like 1.something%, and very soon we'll be like sub 0.01% of annual inflation. You cannot beat this, like you cannot change the rules, and this is beautiful. And this is where Bitcoin comes, with mining comes into place to assure that these rules cannot be changed. And number 4, the database security. So what prevents anybody to creating a new version of blockchain, new version of the database? Well, mining again. With mining, we can make sure that there needs to be a lot of people colluding together to doing 51% attack to making sure that they can create a new alternative version, which right now with Bitcoin mining is virtually or practically impossible. With all the miners around the world creating or having at least 50%, it's literally very hard. And we don't need to count the pools because the pools doesn't control the machines. They don't control the hash rate. They're only aggregating that. So making sure that the Bitcoin is the most secure database in the world, that's why we have mining. If the governments would be thinking what Bitcoin might bring to kind of separation of money and state in future, they would attack it much sooner, and they would attack it from the mining perspective in the first maybe year or two, where they could have gathered enough hash power. Today, it's practically impossible to do. So thanks to mining, we have the most secure database in the world. And something like a proof of work comes into place. So the proof of work was the Hashcash in 1997. The proof of work is mining. What it does, it's showing to everybody around the world that that particular miner, every 10 minutes, is the one who's receiving the reward for their work, and they are the ones who can add transaction to the global database called blockchain. So that's the really crucial concept because everybody around the world can verify, like the same with a Rubik's Cube. If you solve it, anybody can verify that you really did the work, and that's a very crucial part. If we would need to trust somebody that, yeah, I solved it, trust me, I will show it to you next time we see each other, that would be different. With proof of work and showing the hash of the block that it really meets the criteria, anybody can verify in the second. So yeah, the Rubik's Cube comes into place again. Very physical representation of what it means to mine Bitcoin because it's random. If you close your eyes and you don't see how you start, it's just really random thing of solving it, and maybe in 1 year, in 2 years, you suddenly put it together and you can show to anybody like you really solved it. Another analogy that I use when I explain people easily what is Bitcoin is imagine that we here, all of us, having 10 playing dices that we can roll. And we agree with each other that who will be the first one to put, let's say, 5 dices with a number of 6, so 5 sixes at the one roll, that's the one who's going to win the competition. And here's the one who's going to, let's say, receive $100 for that work and can go to a flip chart and write down the new transactions. So we start to play the game, where all of us roll the dice and look into the dice like who really have 5 sixes. If nobody, okay, we do it again and again and again. And suddenly after 10 minutes, somebody of you raise a hand and says, look, I made it, I rolled the dices, and 5 of them are 6s. All of us can look at their dices and his dices and verify that he really did the work, because he couldn't do it otherwise. He would need to roll it, and there needs to, we need to see that. If we verify that, we all can agree in a consensus manner that that's the person who won the competition. He will receive these $100 and go to a flip chart and write down all the transaction that happened there. Suddenly, let's say the competition is interesting. People can win $100. So more of us come here to play the game. What happens then? What happens with the dices is like this 5 dices will be thrown sooner than every 10 minutes. So what do we need to do? We need to raise the difficulty of this mining, because we want to keep every 10 minutes some winner, like somebody winning the competition. That's how Bitcoin works. Every roughly 10 minutes, miners around the world solves the computation, finds the right solution, and add a block to the blockchain. So if suddenly there is double of us here playing the game, suddenly we do it every 5 minutes, and we don't want that. So what are we going to do? We're going to rise the difficulty. How are we going to rise the difficulty? With deciding like, okay, right now, the target is to have at least 8 of the dice to have number 6. And you can really physically see that it's more difficult to throw that. Less winners. And again, we get into roughly the time of every 10 minutes, somebody winning. And this is what Bitcoin is doing on every 2 weeks. Bitcoin as a protocol looks into the history of mining for 2 weeks and count how often on average was every Bitcoin or every block mined. If it's more than 10 minutes, the Bitcoin will put make it easier to find the number. If it is less than 10 minutes, it will make it harder, adding more sixes that you need to put in. So this is one of the analogies I use because you can explain easily the difficulty adjustment, and you can explain, the verification of the solution. Everybody can look into it. So connecting mining to people when you're explaining to reality is really the best, using analogies that people know. Using dices, pulling up the papers, the numbers from the bowl of the papers. So this is something how you can help people understand mining a little bit better. Another good analogy of the functions that happen in Bitcoin is using mixing of the colors. So maybe you heard something called the hash function. Hash function is something we call a one-way mathematical function. But for some people who are not, deep into mathematics, they're like, okay, what is this function? How does it work? So how I explain it is, imagine that I give you 2 colors to mix together. It's super easy to mix 2 colors together and get a third color. It's a very easy process. But imagine I give you 1 color and I asked you what 2 colors I mix together to get this third color. What you can do, you cannot separate these 2 colors from each other from the result one. You need to try it. You need to really mix any random 2 colors, mix them together, check if you have the same color that you wanted. If not, you need to repeat it again and again and again. So this is in the real life, this is the one-way function, right? It goes easily one way, but very difficult the other way around. Another good example of one-way function is if you mix milk with a coffee. Putting milk into a coffee, blending it together, from black you have brown immediately, very easy. But suddenly you cannot mix it the other way around to separate milk and coffee separately, right? It's not possible. It's a one-way physical function. As well, when we're getting more to the cryptography part, we can take a lock. Lock is also a one-way function. You can easily solve it one way, which means locking the padlock without a key. You don't need a key for that. You just lock it, and that's it. But solving it the other way, opening the lock, you need a key. That's difficult. It's not easy, right? So these are all the analogies that helps people to understand what is a one-way function, what is a hash function, what is mining, and how it works in mathematics without going in a detailed manner of what's hashing on a mathematical level. So the mechanism or the algorithm that mining uses for this is called SHA-256, special hashing algorithm, 256 bits, and this is the one-way function that the Bitcoin uses for its own mining purposes. There is a bunch of other hashing algorithms. This is just one of them that Bitcoin uses. And another physical representation is a meat grinder. You can place meat inside, you can grind it and get a ground meat, but you cannot put it back again and get a beautiful steak. It doesn't work, right? So thanks to these one-way functions, it's very difficult to create Bitcoin. It's very energy intense, but it's super easy to verify the other way around. And this was very important. Make sure that the money is created very, very difficultly. It's very costly to create the money, but it's very easy to verify that whoever solves that should receive the Bitcoins as a reward. So there is incentives in place. And as I said, Bitcoin mining, people think that all this hashing, it's like super difficult mathematics. Initially it's not difficult mathematics. You just need to do a lot of computation, but it's easy math. You just need to repeat hundreds of thousands, billions, and trillions of times per second. So there is a video of a guy on the internet on YouTube who was solving the hashing function with hand, with a pen, on a paper. To solve just one iteration of the function, it took him 15 or 16 minutes to do it. So his hash rate was 0.67 hashes per day. And if you check the miners here at Bitmain, they have 250 terahashes, trillion hashes per 1 second. So humans, as a miners, we are very inefficient. We consume a lot of meat. We need to drink. We need maintenance, and we can just solve 0.67 hashes per day. So that's why we have machines which can do that. But if you're really patient enough, and if you have a low time preference, you can try self-solo mining on a piece of paper as well. So yeah, right now, today, we have these machines which are specifically designed to mine Bitcoin. In the early days, it was regular computers, laptops, where you can mine 50 Bitcoins every couple of hours. You know, people were just receiving, free Bitcoin. They were kind of spending it, losing it. So nobody cared at the time. Today, losing 50 Bitcoins or more would be pretty harsh. But these machines are, I call them like a very stupid computers, which can do like just one thing brilliantly and the best in the world. But otherwise, you cannot play a game on this computer. The only thing it does is just solving SHA-256 function as the best computer in the world, the most efficient one. It's consuming the least amount of electricity on solving these functions. They are producing a lot of heat, a lot of noise. So, when we had our first Bitcoin mining container, just entering that, my ears were like hurting a lot. So we needed to wear protections because the machines are crazy heaters. And, now we're coming to the part of environment. Because when you're speaking with your family and friends about Bitcoin and mining, one of the topics that comes mostly is, oh, it's super energy intense. You will boil the oceans. You will, destroy the world with Bitcoin mining. So we're kind of being kind of sarcastic and ironic with this. We have stickers at our booth, boiling the oceans, proudly boiling the oceans. So if you're a miner and you know that all these environmental things around Bitcoin is bullshit, you can wear a sticker boiling the oceans as well. So all the governments, all the NGOs are saying Bitcoin is super killing the planet. But if you really look at the data, it's not like that. This chart is showing us that only the middle part, the orange part, is what really Bitcoin consumes if you look at the consumption of energy around the world. The number there is about 90 terawatt hours. Right now it fluctuates between 100 or 200, so it's roughly in the same terms. It's less than 0.1% of the total consumption in the world. So why we are focusing, and governments are focusing so much energy on solving something or getting rid of something that consumes less than 0.1%, if they could, try to make sure that the grid is more efficient, well, the more you look deeper into that, the more you see there is a different agenda between attacking Bitcoin from the environmentalist perspective. If I look at the time, we have 2 more minutes. Okay. Here you can also see the gray part, which is basically the energy that is lost in the system thanks to inefficiencies, and the green part, which is consumption of Bitcoin. So again, you can see why not to solve inefficiencies of the grid, and we are focusing on Bitcoin mining. It doesn't make sense from a data perspective. And let's look at the consumption of, the Christmas lights. It's roughly, in America, 1/3 of the energy consumption of Bitcoin is consumed only on Christmas lights. So let's ban Christmas lights. Let's ban washing machines and drying machines. Let's wash our clothes with hands, right? If you're looking at these arguments, it doesn't make sense once you show to people kind of these arguments about things that we normally use. So no, you cannot use all that energy to make your own Bitcoin. Nobody uses Bitcoin. We don't care. energy should be the same with money. You should decide on your own what do you want to use your energy on, and the same as what you want to use your money on. And we are mining with a green energy in Paraguay right now. This is the third largest power plant in the world. And if you've never been to Paraguay, you need to go and check this place out. It's insane work of mankind. I was so astonished being there. And Bitcoin is also being mined with the flare gas, so it's carbon negative. So all the arguments of this carbon, it's like, it doesn't make sense anymore. Okay, I will skip this. This is our first power plant we've been mining in. We were turning a cow shit into Bitcoin. So the term shitcoin kind of changes perspective. But yeah, we were creating Bitcoin from cow shit. I'll just skip this because I need to finish up. So if you're miners, be proud to boil the oceans, because in real life you're not boiling the oceans. You're helping the planet to stabilize the grid. You're helping the planet to be more efficient with energy. And as Bitcoiners, you are also born to fix the money. So spread the education of Bitcoin within your families, within your friends. Be a Bitcoin educators, be a Bitcoin mining educators, and tell your family on the next lunch that Bitcoin will not boil the oceans. Thank you so much.